Ever wondered exactly what makes a malpractice claim valid and why some cases move forward while others don't? Whether you're a seasoned dentist or just starting your dental practice, understanding the key elements of a malpractice claim can save you stress, time, and potentially thousands of dollars. But here's the big question. Do you know the 4 components that every malpractice claim must have to hold up in court? Well, stay tuned, because in today's video, we're going to break down exactly what these elements are and why they matter to you as a dental professional. Welcome to Insurance by Dentists, where we are dedicated to educating and simplifying insurance for dental professionals. My name is Orrin Pearson, Vice President at Insurance by Dentists and the author of Insurance for Dentists Malpractice Edition. Thank you so much for joining me today. We bring brand new videos to you every week, so if you enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more content. Let's jump right into today's topic, the 4 elements of a malpractice claim. Malpractice claims hinge on a foundational set of legal requirements that must be proven to hold a professional or entity liable. These are collectively known as the 4 essential elements. These components establish the framework within which negligence cases are evaluated and decided. Although they vary in detail depending on the particular field, whether they be medical or legal, each element must be present for a plaintiff to build a valid claim against you. Together, these elements ensure there is a structured way to assess whether professional conduct fell short, and if it did, whether that shortfall caused harm. When all 4 requirements are met, it signals that an individual or organization failed in a manner recognized by law, leading to compensable harm. Understanding their importance and how they interact is the key to evaluating potential malpractice cases. So let's now look at the elements of a dental malpractice claim. The first element I want to take a look at is the duty of care. In the practice of dentistry, a duty of care is established when a dentist-patient relationship is formed. If a dentist agrees to diagnose and treat a patient, that relationship is recognized by law, and the dentist then has a duty to adhere to the applicable dental standard of care. A legal duty also arises whenever a dental practice or a facility takes on a patient's care or treatment, starting the moment the dentist or staff initiates any dental services. For example, if a new patient comes in for a routine checkup and the dentist or hygienist begins an examination or cleaning, that is sufficient enough to establish a dentist-patient relationship. Once that relationship is formed, the dentist must provide care consistent with professional standards. If a claimant cannot show that the dentist's duty existed at the time of the alleged act or omission, then the first element of a dental malpractice claim does not exist and the claim cannot proceed. The next element is breach of duty. Breach of duty in a dental malpractice claim is established when the dentist's actions fall short of the applicable standard of care. In other words, if a dentist commits an error that a reasonably prudent dentist in the same position would not have made, then the second legal element of a dental malpractice case is met. For example, suppose a patient requires a filling for a cavity and the dentist fails to properly clean and seal the affected area. If this oversight leads to an otherwise avoidable infection or tooth loss, and then an expert dentist testifies that a reasonably prudent professional would have adequately sanitized and filled the cavity, then this would likely indicate a breach of the standard of care. Now, the standard of care itself is most often determined by expert testimony from dentists within the same specialty. These dentists explain both what the proper standard is and why the defendant dentist did or did not meet that standard. They must also describe what a reasonably prudent dentist in similar circumstances would have done. Notably, this does not mean that every dentist must treat every case in an identical manner. Multiple recognized schools of thought can exist within the same field, and the standard of care may accommodate different approaches. Now, but even if a breach of duty is claimed, the patient still has to prove that actual damages were incurred. And that leads us to the next element, damages. The patient must have sustained an actual injury or damage as a result of the dentist's error or omission. This injury may involve pain, infection, the need for additional surgeries or specialized care, or any other harm that arises from substandard dental treatment. Damages can be emotional, physical, or financial, and the law allows injured patients to seek monetary compensation for both the economic and the non-economic consequences of malpractice. The amount recoverable often depends on the severity of harm, the specific losses the patient has suffered, and applicable state laws which may place caps on certain categories of damages, especially non-economic damages for pain and suffering. Moreover, if the patient or a third party contributed to the injury, the recoverable damages may be proportionally reduced. This depends on the rules of comparative or contributory negligence in the relevant jurisdiction. Likewise, joint and several liability principles allow a plaintiff to collect the total amount of an award from any party found liable, although the party that pays can seek contribution from others who share fault. For example, if a patient is awarded a sum against multiple dentists or entities, that full amount may be collected from one defendant. However, that one defendant can in turn seek reimbursement for the other defendant's proportionate share of the liability. The last element that we will take a look at is causation. In a dental malpractice claim, it is not enough to show that a dentist breached the standard of care. The patient must also prove that this breach was the proximate cause of the patient's injury or damage. For example, if a dentist fails to sterilize their instruments before a routine procedure and the patient then develops an infection requiring hospitalization, this demonstrates how the dentist's negligence directly caused the patient's harm. On the other hand, if the dentist does everything correctly, such as sterilizing all instruments properly, but the patient later gets an infection due to the pre-existing medical condition or a failure to follow post-operative care instructions, that would not typically establish causation on the dentist's part. It's now time to wrap it all up. A dental malpractice claim must stand on these four distinct yet interconnected elements, and the law requires that each one be convincingly proven in order for the claim to succeed in court. Even if a patient can show that a dentist had a recognized responsibility or that there were some shortcomings in the treatment, the legal process demands more than just pointing to substandard care. There must be a clear thread running from the dentist's recognized duty to the failure to uphold it, to the harm that actually occurred, and then finally to the real and quantifiable losses the patient experienced. If any part of this chain of reasoning breaks, be it because the patient did not in fact sustain a tangible injury or because the injury cannot be traced back to the alleged lapse in care, the entire claim falls apart. The reason for this requirement is to ensure fairness. Professional liability isn't imposed unless there is some solid proof that someone both deviated from professional expectations and that this deviation caused verifiable harm. Without this framework, the courts would risk punishing practitioners for mere oversights or coincidences where no real damage was done, or where the harm was unrelated to the alleged failings of care. That brings us to the end of today's video, and while it's a straightforward concept, it's one that has real importance. So thank you for tuning in. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content on insurance, risk management, and practice building strategies. So feel free to share any questions or suggestions in the comments. I always appreciate hearing your thoughts. And remember, if you want to explore these concepts in greater detail, you can find my book, Insurance for Dentists, Malpractice Edition, in the description below. If you need personalized guidance or have more questions, feel free to reach out. We're here to help. I'm Warren Pearson, Vice President at Insurance by Dentists. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.